right.
So it's 5:30. So we'll start. I don't have this memorized, so I am going to read off the sheet of paper that I wrote down. But thank you for joining tonight's Ward 3 meeting. It looks like right now we have about 16 attendees and 4 panelists who are ready to participate. I appreciate you guys joining us. I realize how busy you guys are and appreciate your attendance. As you were council, I did promise your voice matters, and I'm very happy to do this board meeting and other ward meetings in the future. So my hope is to hear from all of you tonight as we discuss each individual zoning amendment that is being recommended by our planning board. Our planning board serves as advisory appointed board from our city council. This board meeting is not an official public hearing. And then I believe the public hearing will be on February 22nd. So I just wanted to introduce who's on call with us. We do have Sherry, Jason, who's council at large, and Sean, who is on the planning board, and will be starting with a presentation of the proposed zoning amendments.
And Council Majota, Council President Gilman is on the call as well.
Oh, perfect. I will get to any questions after the presentation. So I see that there is a hand raised. We will go through the presentation just in case those who have not heard it. I want everyone to have the opportunity to hear it, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that people will have.
And just for the record, I'll be taking down questions that will include, if we don't have an answer tonight, we can get them for you. We will put those into the public record and try to have those at the next P&D meeting, which would be a week from Wednesday.
So first, we're going to have Sean, who will briefly discuss the slides that Sherry will be presenting. And then second, we'll ask all the ward residents who own property in Ward 3 or live in Ward 3 to support or propose the amendments. And then you have about 3 minutes to speak based on the number of attendees. What I will want is everyone to have an opportunity to speak first. And then if you do have another question, time allows, we will go back to the individual. And that's it for now. So if we're ready for Sean and Sherry, start the presentation.
Give me one moment. I'm bringing up the slides.
Right, just I'll run through a quick history of how we got there. Can't remember if the history is on the next slide or not, but basically this process started back in, say, 2013, 2014. The planning board was studying both the Railroad Avenue area and the Main Street corridor, realizing that there could be some changes to zoning there that might help rejuvenate those two major areas in downtown. From that, and in combination with the zoning process that started with the conversion of Camerons for affordable housing, we realized we needed to do a complete assessment of what our housing current situation is, and try to start planning what our needs are in the future. So that sort of launched off the housing reduction plan that ran, I believe it started in late 2014, ran through basically sort of the end of 2016. We forwarded the housing production plan on to the City Council. City Council approved that in early 2017. And a housing production plan implementation review working group was formed, again, comprised of members of the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, City Council, Gloucester Housing Authority representative, representatives from Action, a couple of community organization representatives, and basically trying to put the HPP into context for review of our current zoning, find out, determine what we needed to massage or change in our existing zoning that would allow us to move forward with the needs that were expressed in housing production plan. And that sort of has gotten us to this point that we're at now. Last year, early in the year, we forwarded a new inclusionary zoning ordinance that went to the city council. That was passed early last year. We followed that up with an ADU ordinance, an accessory dwelling unit that allows folks to, as long as they're on a conforming lot, to build either an internal or external accessory dwelling unit. Those can't have separate ownership. They can only be homeowner owned. They can't be rented full time. There's a restriction on those for short-term Airbnb rentals. They're limited to a minimum of 30 days. That was sort of the second facet of what we were working on. This group is all around, the current amendments are all around basically dimensional requirements. We looked at conversion from single family to two family, conversion from single family in some districts to single or two family to three family, and basically also took a look at some of the dimensional requirements in our larger districts that were prohibiting two family creation in those districts. So that's where we're at now with what we have. Go on. So basically just did this. You can go on to the next slide. So again, these all stemmed from the housing production plan. What we need to do with our zoning to sort of affect the changes, increase the housing stock that the housing production plan said we need. So these are all relatively small changes in terms of the dimensional requirements and the adjustments to two family by right allowances. Currently, our zoning allows two family new construction by right as long as the lot meets all the dimensional requirements. It allows conversion of existing single family into a two family with internal modifications by right. Again, if all the setbacks, all the other dimensional requirements for the lot are met. And it requires, though, a special permit for conversion of an existing single family to two family with an exterior conversion. And so we're bringing that into alignment with the other two uses. Let's see. Trying to quickly touch base with everything that's on here. How we address affordability elsewhere in the community. We have community development block grants that we use for affordable housing purposes. We have our inclusionary zoning ordinance that mandates somebody coming in with anything now 6 units or larger. It's mandated they include affordable housing in those developments. And we adjusted that this last year. Previously, 80% was the 80% AMI, area mean income, was the limit for affordable housing. Our needs in Gloucester trend lower than that. And so we created an option within that inclusionary zoning to target the 60% AMI, which again suits Gloucester's needs much better. We added the ADU provision, which again isn't a deed restricted option, and official capital A affordable housing is only are only considered if they're deed restricted units. Anything else that we refer to as small A affordable housing is still market rate, but on the more affordable end of the spectrum of that market rate housing. Let's see, these amendments were homegrown and they're entirely under the City Council's purview to either pass them or reject them. There were some rumors floating around that these were somehow foisted on us from out of town, either by the state or some UN agency. That's certainly not the case. And again, in terms of affordability, I know there's been a lot of focus online asking about affordability with these amendments. And again, to be clear, if big A affordable units are only certified if they're deed restricted, these amendments don't focus on the capital A, big A affordable deed restricted units. These focus on the potential creation of more affordable, moderately priced market rate units. Can we go to the next one? Right, so we've had a long history of two families. We started two families by special permit back in the 80s, and that has changed over time. Again, the current ordinance as it stands now allows for construction of a new two-family on an empty lot. It allows someone to buy an existing single-family home, tear that down, and rebuild by right, again, assuming that the lot is completely conforming with all our dimensional requirements, and allows creation of a two-family by right with internal conversion. The only special event that's required is with exterior change. Go on. So this basically presents our average conversion in the past 4 years from 2018 to last year, 2021. We created, you'll see 82 units over that 4-year period. And you can see the breakdown: 1 to 2 family conversions, new 2 families, 2 to 3 conversions, and new 3 families. So again, totality between 2 family and 3 family, we've averaged just over 20 units per year in the past as our current residence stands. Next one. Right, this basically, these are the numbers for the potential increase in these conversions or creation of 2-family and 3-family unit. The numbers in the R5 district, you'll see take the most significant jump from 327 units up to 875 units. That's because it's including both potential for 2-family and 3-family by right conversion in those. And again, to get to that number, that would assume that everyone who currently owns one of those 327 homes is going to elect to convert to a 3-family. That completely negates the consideration of the 2-family. It goes basically from that 327 number, three family units in all of those, which is incredibly unlikely. You see in our R10, R20, the numbers don't change because again, in terms of by right use, we're only talking in those districts, and R30 about 2-family conversions. 3-family is allowed in those districts, but it's allowed only with a special permit by the ZBA. So the numbers aren't really affected because essentially, if you comply in those districts, we have 2-family by right, again, currently either by ripping down the old building, building new, or doing a 2-family conversion. So the numbers overall don't change because the only change we're making to the ordinance is bringing into line the conversion with exterior modification. And you see in our larger districts, the numbers are really pretty small in all of those, from 43 in R30, you got a little over 50 in R40. There's no increase in RC40, which again, just to extrapolate on that, explain specifically with RC40, the current ordinance prohibits anything other than single-family development within the RC40 district. It's our only actual single-family zone remaining in Gloucester. All the other districts, all the other residential districts in town are in fact 2-family by right now to varying degrees. And we've got a slight bump in R80. And I think it may be on a slide in the future, but just since we have the numbers here, the numbers boost in those larger districts, R30, R40, and R80, because one of the other ordinances that or the amendments we're proposing is to reduce the doubling. It's currently, if you're going to do a 2-family in either of those districts, you have to double the standard lot size. So if you're in R40, rather than 40,000 square feet, the current ordinance says you need 80,000 square feet to support a 2-family. In R80, it goes from 80,000 square feet to 160,000 square feet. And there's not many lots out there that are in compliant that can actually do that by the doubling. What we've done is not reduce the overall lot size. I know that was in the paper on social media that there was a proposal to actually reduce the overall lot size. That's not in fact the case. Overall lot size is remaining the same. What we've done in those larger districts is reduce the per unit lot size so that a 2-family is now allowed on the standard size lot, as is the case with all the other districts in town. Can we go on to the next one? So again, these are the potential numbers, that total number of lots, the compliant lots, and it's important to note that these amendments, the by right allowances permitted by these amendments, is only permissible if the existing lot is completely compliant with all dimensional requirements, and if there's an existing structure. If you're doing a conversion to an existing structure, the existing structure also has to be completely compliant, meaning it has to meet all those setbacks. Failing any of those, you're forced to go to the ZBA for a hearing there and get a special permit from the ZBA to move forward with any of those. So I did some math. It's not on here. Gloucester zoning was not officiated or officialized in Gloucester until the 60s. Prior to that, for all our time, the lots were divided up as they were. Houses were built as they were. We have a lot of non-compliant lots. If you look around, if you do the math on these, I'll just quickly go over them. R10 has only a little over 25% of its lots in R10 are actually compliant. In R20, you're looking at this about 17% compliant lots. R30 is 11.5 compliance. R40 jumps up to 27%. RC40 down to 4% compliant lots. And in R80, just under 15% are compliant. Overall, citywide, the compliance is just below 20%. It's just shy of 19.5% citywide. So again, none of these by right proposals in the amendments can be exercised by a homeowner or a lot owner unless they're fully compliant, both in terms of the lot size, dimensions, and the existing dwelling that happens beyond that. Moving down, you'll see the potential for new units in each of those districts. So again, R10, you'd be looking at if everyone who on a compliant lot chooses to convert, you would hit up to 960 new units. If everyone in R20 chose to do so, 814 and so on. I won't read the entire list to you, but again, particularly the smaller districts are pretty much widely spread throughout all of our districts. But the larger districts, R30, R40, R80, are principally located in Ward 5 and Ward 4. Again, RC40 it's basically its own district, primarily Eastern Point, with a stretch along the seashore going out towards Magnolia as well. And you can see that they're basically in RC40 if that provision to allow a conversion in RC40 with a special permit is passed, you're looking at only an increase of 11 potential units out there. And again, separate from the zoning and the dimensional requirements, all other provisions in terms of septic systems, engineering for wetlands, Conservation Commission, adequate access to the property to construct the house or to modify the house, all those provisions have to be met. Off-street parking. I know there's big concern downtown about the 3-family issue and concerns about providing parking for that. None of those 3-family units could be built unless they can provide adequate parking off-street. 3 families actually have stricter parking compliance than normal single-family or 2-family homes because they have to provide all of the access for parking outside of the front yard setbacks. So it has to be either side yard or in the rear for that. So it's much more restrictive in that respect. But again, to summarize again and to stress again, None of this happens unless the lot is fully compliant, both with zoning and all of the other land use concerns that the city has in place right now. And none of those are changing for this. We can go on to the next. Again, this is R5. The number's a bit larger here because, again, this is the only district that we're proposing to have three-family conversion by right. We do that because R5 is our district with the most existing three-family units in it right now. It's not anticipated that that everyone would be doing these conversions. It's far more likely that we'll see numbers in line with what our current production is. You know, again, if we went from the current 20-unit production for 2 and 3 family per year that we've had for the past 4 years, if these amendments are passed and they're widely adopted by homeowners, I think you would anticipate maybe a 25% annual increase in that. So again, basically 4 to 5 additional units per year. All right, so next one. Building height is one of the other issues that we're dealing with. This, I won't bore you with reading this. If you can do a screen capture, this is how building height is defined in Gloucester. It's kind of complex and you need almost an engineering degree to be able to do it. But this just shows you what the current specifications for building height and how that's determined. We can go to the next slide. So these are our neighboring communities that have, again, it's a little tough to see because it's all pink and red, but basically just a quick graph to show that a majority of our neighbors have building height in allowance in excess of the 30 feet that we have. We have 30 feet. Rockport, our immediate neighbor, has 30 feet. Essex is 35 feet. Manchester, 35 feet. Beverly, Salem, 35 feet. So essentially just a quick screen grab of what is allowed in general in the area to show that basically 35 feet is not abnormal or non-standard. The next one. All right, so again, I won't bug you with reading all through this. This is because the ordinance are kind of dry language and complex. So with going back and forth between the ordinance itself or the amendment itself covering the ordinance, plus supporting footnotes that are elsewhere, we just tried to break it down so that 1 through 6 are the main provisions of what the amendment itself is altering. So just as an example, we're bringing uniformity to the zoning ordinance section 2.3.1 that regulates production of 2-family homes. It removes the ZBA special permit requirement for 1 to 2-family conversions with exterior modifications. It treats each way you get to a compliant 2-family structure uniformly per Mass General Law 40A section 4, which mandates the same treatment for similar uses in a particular zoning district. So basically it says you have to be fair. You can't treat the way you get there differently for the same use within the same zoning district. And let's see, it adds, that's what I mentioned, it adds special permit possibility to convert an existing 2-family home or build a new 2-family home in RC40. And again, we'll get into, Frank, I think we'll be getting into the specifics of all these later, but this is just a quick run through. The Amendment 2 allows, actually, yeah, 2 allows conversion to or construction of 3-family by right in R5. The reduction in per unit dwellings is affected by Amendment 3. Again, we're not reducing the minimum lot size in any of those districts. We're actually reducing the per unit lot size so that a 2-family home can be accommodated on a standard size district in those districts. And there's particular one extra note. onto R30, because R30, we're proposing in one of the amendments that a 3-family home be allowed with a ZBA special permit in R30. Previously, that was not allowed. We're adding that. So the lot size would cover that as well. The other issue I hadn't really touched on yet is the change, recommended change in lot width. Right now, our zoning ordinance calls for basically sort of a little pregnant bulge in all of our the larger districts, so that you have your frontage, minimum frontage required, and currently the lot has to fatten out again before it can recede back. So basically, just to create some uniformity in those lot dimensions, we're recommending that the current minimum lot widths that you'll see on the chart be reduced to correspond to the minimum lot frontage that is on the books now. Number 5 deals with maximum height for the 2, 3, and single family homes in all the districts that accept those uses, which typically all the are residential, but it also would include the CCD, CB, and VB districts that do allow homes there as well. Basically, as I said, over the course of our history, we had no zoning. We have a lot of buildings substantially taller than our current 30-foot height limit that were built prior to zoning. I think at the recent P&D or City Council meeting, they dealt with an existing building off of Beacon Street. I believe that it was historic building, 48 feet tall, and they had to give basically a retroactive special permit to the new owner to bring that into compliance. So the height above 30 feet has been fairly, if not standard, fairly common in the past, and the 30-foot limit has flip-flopped over the years back and forth with a 35-foot limit. Greg Catamatori, our planning director, has sort of been trying to work out a history of the flip-flop on that, but because our historic records are a little unkept, he's been having a difficult time with that. But 2 or 3 times over the last few decades, it's flip-flop back and forth between 35 and 30 feet. And we get to 6, and that is specific again to the downtown area. For the most part, there is provision in there where it mentions 35 again for those residential districts, because multifamilies in those districts are still going to be limited to that 35-foot height. But the amendment calls for those multifamily mixed use buildings in the CCD and CB, which is specifically downtown, the Main Street corridor, the upland side, inland side of Rogers Street, and then CCD is the area immediately surrounding City Hall, includes the library, the museum, etc. Moved for 45 feet for that, so that basically redevelopment along Main Street can include commercial space downstairs, and then easily accommodate 2 floors of residential space above. So that's basically the amendments in a nutshell. So I don't know if there's another slide here. We'll see. I think that's all for me. I'll turn it back over to Frank to go through the dry stuff.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully everyone who was not able to see it before, it's a good snapshot on everything. I know that the planning board has worked very hard and to make these proposed amendments. So in this part right here, I'm going to open up to the attendees to ask questions. I do ask all the Ward 3 residents to tell us what you support about any and all these proposed amendments and what you don't support. Again, I want everyone to stay on track, and we are talking about the amendments that are these proposed amendments. Jason will be taking notes and helping me out if I need anything, and Sean is also here. So we can open up Any attendees wants to raise their hand and be able to speak, now is the time to do it. Okay, I have Beverly, you were first. The floor is yours.
Excuse me, Councilor Majota. Do you want me to leave the presentation up on the screen?
If you want to actually leave, I believe I like slide. The chart one would be working best. Yeah, that one. Yeah, keep going.
Sorry.
Keep going. That one.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, I like that one. I think that we can leave on for now. And then Beverly.
Frank,
Please.
make sure that people names and addresses for the record.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So please state your address and your name for the records.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Beverly Palmacci, 8 Commonwealth Avenue, Gloucester.
Fired up.
Yes, we can hear you now, Beverly.
Okay. First of all, it took me, I don't know how long to finally figure out how to get on here. It wouldn't take passwords. I had to make 3 passwords. This was extremely frustrating. But I have to say, this is just me. I can't listen to someone just read and recite all those letters, numbers, you know, percentages, figures. It just does not penetrate. I can't retain all that. So that all went by and I got almost nothing out of it, unfortunately. May just be me. Maybe I have a learning disability. I don't know. But it's not helpful. I think it would have been better if maybe we all had access to that information, that we could have read it ahead of time to kind of glean what the basics were.
Beverly, sorry, you're coming in and out with the voice. But all this information is found on the city website as well.
Okay.
And you can email me and I can give you the link to get it. But all this information that Sean did read is available on the website. And there's nothing to hide. Everything is there for you.
No, I don't think anything's being hidden. I just can't comprehend it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If someone just reads that whole thing through, how long can you keep listening to it? It's for me, it's just not helpful.
Okay.
I think it would have been helpful if we just concentrated on what pertains to our ward, because this is a Ward 3 meeting, so it would be easier to comprehend, to digest, and to respond to. Number one, I mean, just for starting, I added up the figures of the potential conversions. It's over 2,000 for all of Gloucester, which seems like a whole lot to me. I have a question about, he mentioned if a building were, you know, enlarged to be more units or whatever, they have to accommodate parking, but that the parking would have to adhere to certain setbacks, if I heard that correctly. I don't know if those are new rules or are those already existing zoning rules, but I'm on Commonwealth and Wells, and on Wells Street, when property was transferred to a new owner, she just paved over the grass. The parking is right there on the street. We look like a large parking lot, the street. So I don't know. I don't know about these setbacks. Do these setbacks always exist to put parking in? Anybody
Sean,
else?
would you be?
Yeah, you want me to take a stab at that?
Yes.
Beverly, I apologize for boring you with my
I just can't
my
retain
rambling
it.
reading. Yep, no problem. Just quickly to speak to Ward 3 that you asked, and I apologize. I meant to do that. I've got my little cheat sheet on Ward 3. Predominantly, Ward 3 is made up of R5, R10, and R20, with a smattering of general industrial uses, city-owned properties that aren't developable. You've got it includes over in West Gloucester, the Cape Ann Marina goes out to top of the harbor again, which is that Essex County corridor just after LePage, just after LePage is an R20 district. So you've got
That's
your
Ward 3?
Yes, that's Ward 3.
Okay.
Surprising, I know, because it's kind of a gerrymandered ward. It looks like when you're looking at the map. It took me a while to sort of sketch it out and include everywhere that is in it. It actually goes along, it exits the waterfront down by the fort. It doesn't go into the fort. Fort's part of Ward 2, but it comes along the street coming off of Western Avenue and follows Washington Street out to where Washington Street intersects with Oak Grove Cemetery. It cuts to the right there, jogs back downtown a little bit, surrounds the general industry, the industrial park that is up off of, well, near 128, where Bombco is on the other side. Basically, the railroad track is what it follows along there. So cuts there, goes underneath the highway and abuts the reservoir on the other side of 128. Again, comes back by some residential neighborhoods, the Catholic cemetery that's over there, the Cape Ann Museum lot that's there.
Okay.
It's Washington Street again, and then out to Riverview. So that's the area.
The long and short of it is that it's a ward that encompasses a lot of the zoning areas
Yes.
that we're talking about.
5, 10, and 20 are all,
Yes,
you said,
yeah.
are all in
5
Ward 3.
Yeah,
And
five,
those
five,
are the huge numbers. Those are the highest columns. So we are going to be the ward that is impacted more than anyone else. And we're already the most congested ward, correct?
well, there's the potential because you do have a lot of the R5, so there's the potential there. But again, the other thing to keep in mind, if you go back to the other chart, which I think is the next page down, we could go to that. Yep, that's one. You see actually the compliant lots through there. You've got in R10 only 25.5% of the lots in R10s, which are spread again throughout most of the city in places, are actually compliant. So you'd be limited by that.
So there are 909 lots.
Compliant lots throughout the city.
R10. That's a lot.
Yeah, but those aren't. I'm
That's
just trying to
throughout the
click.
city.
Those aren't only in Ward 3. Those are shared throughout the city.
Okay, so we don't have the figures for Ward 3 then. Actually,
It's
broken down.
unfortunately the mapping software that we have is as good as it is. We're not able to actually pull, or at least I'm not actually able to divide those lots among the various political
Okay.
districts within
All right,
town.
so am I right in saying that Ward 3 has more that potential units or lots or whatever to be affected than any other ward? Sounds like we're right up there, correct?
Well, you're up there, but you're also one of the wards, along with Ward 2, that has, again, just anecdotally scrolling around through the neighborhoods, you're one of the most non-compliant wards as well. A lot of the areas, particularly the R5 area near where you live, Commonwealth Ave, Beacon Street, et cetera. A lot of those lots that are through that area, again, were, they were subdivided long before we had zoning. So rather than the required 5,000 square feet, you'll find a lot of lots up there that are between 2,000 and 4,000 square feet, which again, aren't compliant. So they could not do any of these things by right. And similarly, when you get out into the R10 area around Riverview, you do have some large lots out there, but you also have a lot of the lots that are there that are non-compliant. They're smaller than the required 10,000 square feet there. And it's the same thing as you're going out that Essex Avenue corridor over in West Gloucester, that a lot of those lots, both on Essex Avenue and off of Bond Street, even though they're in a R20, which requires 20,000 square feet, the actual number of lots that are compliant is far less than that.
Okay, so, but going back to my original statement about the amount. If you add up the compliant lots, I realize these are not all Ward 3. They're for Gloucester. There's over 2,000 compliant lots. So this means that there are 2,000 opportunities, correct? For
That would
someone,
be, if I could, I know where you're going with this, Ms. Palmacci. That is the outer edge of possibility for development. Then you have to take into factors all of the non-conforming structures that make the lot non-conforming. You have to take into account whether or not that property can pass septic scrutiny, whether it can provide the parking. The parking nothing is changing in the parking whatsoever. So all the existing regulations regarding parking are in effect now. I can't speak to your original notice about your neighbor. She may not have a 3-unit building. She may have had the ability to pave her front yard, but that wasn't a result of these zoning amendments or any changes. So a lot of those lots are going to become non-compliant. When this is compliant lots in this list, it's only lots that are actually physically large enough. It doesn't include non-compliant structures that are on those lots. So that number goes down.
okay, so I guess we would have to know of those that are compliant, how many are possible? That is what
Right, you'd
you're
have to
saying.
go out and measure. You'd have to go out and measure each house, each lot to make sure the setbacks were there. But unfortunately, the software and our map geo doesn't give us that accurate a rendering of the properties. But if your existing property has a house on it that is too close to the property line, the whole thing is non-compliant, and therefore it becomes a non-compliant and subject to ZBA review.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Another question I have is, or maybe it's just an issue.
Yes,
I have.
Beverly, one more question, please, as we
Okay,
do have
all right.
quite a few attendees.
I know, I'm trying to make this fast, but we keep getting caught in the weeds. What was I just going to say now? I just forgot what I was going to say. Well, one thing is, I'm not sure why we're comparing ourselves to other towns. I have no idea, what Essex is doing or what their downtown streets look like. I'm concerned about Gloucester. That's my sole focus. And I know what Gloucester looks like. I know what we can accommodate. I'm right in the thick of it. I'm right there. I'm right around the corner from Railroad Avenue and the train station. So I see myself being greatly impacted by this. And I see, for instance, what the neighbor was able to do by paving over her yard. And if that is in compliance with zoning rules, that sort of thing concerns me. And I know the impact that having B&Bs has on us, because I have that right across the street from me. So all of this zoning stuff really concerns me. And I think it does concern other people too. And I want to know, will Gloucester lose funding if they don't make these changes? Is that a carrot for Gloucester to make these changes? Get
No.
funding from the state or anything?
No, these are all zoning changes that came forward out of our work on the housing production plan that we'd done previously, that identified our housing needs and asked us to work on our zoning to help bring us into compliance with that, those needs, the housing needs.
Okay, and this is not a mandate, correct?
No.
Nothing about this is a mandate. This is for Gloucester to decide, do they want to take on these new rules or not, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. All right, I'm done.
All right, thank you, Beverly.
Thank
If you
you.
do have more, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me as well, or I'm going to go through the list, and then you're more than welcome to raise your hand and ask more questions if other people have not asked a question that you're thinking about.
Okay, they may still be trying to get on Zoom like I was.
Yeah, I maybe be able to help you with that. Just shoot me an email and we'll go over it. Okay.
All right, thank you.
No problem. So up next will be Tom Clark. So please just state your address and your name for us, please.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Tom Clark, 2 Gloucester Ave.
Okay.
So just a couple of comments and questions. I'll just throw them out there. First of all, I agree with Beverly. It's a lot of information to try to digest in a quick presentation like this, but that's the fault of no one. How long has this presentation or this information been up on the city website?
I would have to look into that. As long as I've been the ward counselor, it's been up there for at least the whole month and a half that I've been ward counselor. Jason, do you know if it's been there longer?
Well, it's been up as long as we've had it available to the council, but keep in mind that the planning board has been working on this for better part of a year. So this has been subject to public hearings, public input. I know that people feel like it's brand new information, but it's actually been in the works for quite some time. That is kind of part of what we have planning boards and, you know, these organizations to committees to do the deep dive work that comes into this. And by the time it comes to the city council, you know, we also are learning this process and learning what the impacts are. But this wasn't sprung on us. Okay, it wasn't something that just appeared out of nowhere. It's something that has been coming out of the process of the housing production plan and the planning board for quite some time.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I just, for those of us who aren't monitoring, you know, the weekly, monthly goings on at the planning board and so on, I don't know, just sort of as a big picture suggestion, I'm not sure how to get people like me better informed about stuff like this, but you know, I don't know. Maybe you can think about that and give me some suggestions at the end of the meeting, because to me, this is news. Even though, admittedly, a lot of that may be because I'm not going on to the Gloucester website and looking at planning committee meeting minutes or what have you. Another, I'm a little unclear as to when ZBA special permit would be required. I thought I heard towards the beginning that it would be required only or in cases where they're not in compliance, but then there was a slide towards the end that said that it was going to eliminate the need of ZBA special permit to put it in line with the other wards. So could someone clarify that for me quickly?
Sean, you want to take that, or you want me to take that?
Yeah, no, I'll hop in on that. Yeah, basically, Tom, what you're talking about is it's the First Amendment, and it deals with our process to create a two-family unit in all of our districts. So, you know, citywide. Basically, what the current amendment or what the current ordinance calls for is that if you're building a new home on raw land, or you're tearing down an existing structure, building a new two-family home, as long as the lot itself is compliant and you're fitting within the setbacks, you can do that by right. If you've got an existing two-family home that's on a compliant lot, that is a compliant building, you can convert to a two-family internally. Again, no external modifications, just internally, you can do that by right. When you get to the existing single-family home on a compliant lot that requires an exterior modification to convert it to two-family, that's where our current zoning ordinance sends the applicant to the ZBA for approval, even though all other things are equal to the other two ways of getting there, and that the lot is again compliant. So we're removing that restriction, calling for a ZBA special permit on that, particularly the two-family conversion with an exterior modification. And that actually brings the ordinance in compliance with Mass General Law 40A Section 4, which says all uses which are the same use must be treated the same within the same district, so that our, as it stands now, the current ordinance does not comply with that. The only other thing you might be talking about, I talked about a special permit in one of these amendments. It covers, actually, we've proposed that RC40, you can go to 2-family with a special permit and 3-family construction or conversion in R30 zone. Current ordinance prohibits that, and the proposal would allow that as a special permit use with ZBA approval.
No,
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate that. It's still a little fuzzy to me, but that's just me. I would just throw out there that, you know, that the notion that any kind of change or new build requiring special permit has to get this special permit from the ZBA as being some sort of a I don't know, just sort of concrete prevention against things not being built to code is from my perspective not particularly certain. There have been a couple of cases where things got special permits and it's very unclear why that happened. So I just hope that you all folks are aware of that perception that may be out there. So let me just ask a very general question, and then I'll be quiet. What is the highest building height in stories that you all are contemplating by this plan?
Frank, do you want me to go for that?
Yes, yes, please.
Basically, a 35-foot height would allow for a potential for 3-story, or in case you're in a floodplain, would allow for 2-story livable stories and non-habitable space down below where potential for flooding exists. In the downtown area, where I mentioned that the proposal, there's a separate amendment that increases multifamily, mixed-use multifamily residential construction for the Main Street area and the CCD, which is the area surrounding City Hall. That goes to 45 feet, and that would again be for a 3-story also potential, where you would have commercial space down below, and then 2 floors of residential up top.
Okay, so 3 stories.
Yeah.
One might perhaps potentially a little bit higher than the other.
Yeah.
it should
Okay,
be pointed out, Tom, in a previous presentation, the planning board came up with a 45-foot, largely because that is about the average height of buildings along Main Street and the Roger Street corridor. So it would be fitting in with what's currently there.
okay. Well, this work obviously involved a lot of, this plan involved a lot of work, and thanks to all who were involved in it. And I'll look at it in more detail online. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tom. Up next, we'll have Amanda Nash. Please state your name and your address, please.
Hi, yes, I'm Amanda Nash. I'm at 8 Exchange Street. And first, I want to say that I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I know it's been a really long haul, and I am 100% in favor of these new changes, all of them, not just the one being spoken of today. But I'm very frustrated with the process. For one thing, as Beverly said, it was really hard to get onto this meeting. It involved going to the website, scrolling down to another page, seeing 3 links, none of which were links to the meeting. Then you finally find an agenda, and it gives you the meeting URL, but it's not live. So you have to write it down and type it in. And to me, this just screams of, we don't really want you to come. So I consider that really just a really bad thing. I mean, most meetings are on the remote public meetings site, but this was not. So I was really frustrated with that. I think many people were probably deterred by that. At least Beverly wasn't, so that was good. And then the other thing is, you know, I really feel like these meetings should have begun a long time ago, when people really could have felt like they had some input. And now here we are towards the end of the process, and people are coming in, and the way the meetings are proposed, you know, I understand it's complicated information, but I really feel like if somebody would just to sit down and discuss it with people in a conversational tone and explain to them what it is about this proposal that is going to benefit us, I think that would, you know, and have that precede the slides and the charts and everything. I think that would be really helpful to people. I've been involved in the process. I find it very complicated, but I'm always trying to figure out how it would feel to hear this information if I had not been involved. And I think it's just incomprehensible. And I think there are ways, you know, I mean, what I like about this proposal is that it introduces more smaller units integral to the neighborhoods, which to me is not only good in and of itself, but it also avoids having giant complexes built by developers who don't even know the town. So I think it's good to point those things out to people so they understand why these things are being proposed and how it will benefit them. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Amanda. And we'll try to figure out the city website to make it easier for meetings. We obviously want all the constituents to be able to join, have an opinion. So we'll work on that. Again, reach me at any time on my email, please. If you have any difficulties, I do my very best to get back to everyone that does email me.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
If I could-
with, yes.
If I could
Sorry.
just quickly,
Of course.
again, not to defend the process, because it certainly hasn't worked out to be the way we would preferred it, but going back to the HPP implementation working group, our plan there all along had been to work with the city councilors once we got these recommendations nailed down to essentially do what we're doing now, ward meetings, but live ward meetings. Unfortunately, COVID interceded with that and shut everything down. And we actually put these on the back burner, actually on complete hold for a while, because we were hopeful that we could get back to, again, live in-person meetings. And that, unfortunately, as we all know, hasn't happened. The other unfortunate truth is that the planning board meetings and planning board subcommittee meetings are very much like the city council meetings, are all publicly noticed. Their agendas are publicly advertised. There were one or two few people that attended every one of these meetings that the planning boards had over the last 4 years. But again, I recognize that the planning board isn't the sexy board to keep up to date with. So typically there's not a lot of attention paid until it gets to a point like this where we're bringing it forward to you folks on the council.
Thank you, Sean. Next, we'll have Hillary speak. Hillary, please state your name and address. Hillary, you're on mute. Hillary?
You can come back to her.
Okay. Go to Sunny Robinson, please. Sunny, are you there? You just muted yourself again. Perfect. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes. Thank you,
Okay,
Sunny.
great. Thank you very much. So Sunny Robinson, I live at 20 Harvard Street, which is a little tiny cul-de-sac neighborhood just above the Veterans Center. I have lived here for the 25 plus years that I've lived in Gloucester. And I am very much in favor of all of these ordinances, but I have a couple of questions. So let me run through some of my reasons for support and then end up with my concerns and questions.
Okay.
I am one of the fortunate people who, because I have followed housing issues for the full 25 years that I've lived in Gloucester, were aware of these proposals as they were very carefully and thoroughly developed through the housing production plan, through the planning board, and then on to city council and P&D, and here we are now. So it certainly is helpful having familiarity with these kinds of proposals. And I think one of the things that points out is that going forward in our ward, Frank, I really invite you to have regular ward meetings so that we all have the opportunity to keep up with the major issues going on in our city, and not just folks like me who have followed the process for all these years. Housing has always been a concern of mine because I was the city's public health nurse from 2000 to 2008, and understanding that adequate housing is the basis of health, I've always followed what's been going on. Now, for almost 20 of the 25 years that I've lived here, we've had a discussion in town about the fact that there is adequate housing to help the people who want to stay in Gloucester. And that's been true whether it was young people looking for a first apartment out of school or college, or a young family looking for a starter home or apartment. And certainly it's been true for senior citizens, a group that I am now well within. So I am very in favor of these proposals, as I was the changes in the inclusionary zoning and the changes in the accessory dwelling units, because I think they create the potential for there to be more housing units available to those of us who are of either limited or moderate income who have lived in the city of Gloucester. And when you think that the area median income is only 70,000 or so, I'm just using whole numbers, that's not as specific, and you look at the cost of housing, whether it's rental housing or purchasing housing, there is very little that is available to that 50% of our population that lives below or at the area mean income. So these dimensional changes, which create the equality within districts so that you could add a unit without having to go the special permit route, as well as what has already been done in the accessory dwelling units, I think are a great step forward, because they create the potential of actually affordable housing, not just HUD restricted affordable housing, but affordable housing across the whole spectrum of Gloucester incomes. The potential is there. But I think one of the questions I would put to City Council, the Planning Board, the Affordable Housing Trust, the Community Preservation Committee, is how are you going to incentivize people to make an addition, a second family unit or an accessory dwelling unit to their house, so that in fact we actually get some units that are affordable, and again, small a affordable across the spectrum of the genuine incomes in our city. I think that that is a problem that doesn't just get solved by these important changes to the dimensional requirements, but is really going to take the creativity of all of us in the city to have these proposals create housing that is affordable rather than high-income housing. Now, I am not concerned about the numbers of units that are going to get created, because I think it's absolutely clear that not everybody who has a conforming lot or a conforming structure is going to choose to, in fact, add a unit to their housing. Most people are not going to do that. And so I actually have to end up hoping that, in fact, some people do add a unit to their house, whether it's rental or whether it's a second home ownership, whether it's for a child returning from college, starting a family,
Ms. Robinson, sorry to interrupt. Thank you. We're getting a little, about 6 minutes. I'm trying to allow everyone about 3 minutes to talk. If you have any question, like another question you can add. If not, I would like to go through the attendees and then be able to get back to you. But going back to what you said in the beginning, more of these meetings, I do plan on holding more ward council meetings at least quarterly. That's something I want to do. And a lot of the information that I do have is also on the Facebook page, Ward 3 Councilor Frank Majota, and I post all the information that we get out there, all the meetings and stuff, so you can have that. So I'm more than happy to get back to you. I just do have quite a few attendees with hands up, and I would love to get to them as well.
Yeah, let me just do my 2 questions again.
Okay.
Because I support these proposals, my question is, how is the City Council, the Planning Board, the Affordable Housing Trust, the Community Preservation Committee going to actually incentivize units getting built that meet the affordable needs of the residents of this city? And secondly, while I support the increase in height, I do think there needs to be a provision so that people who have a concern about view have a way of raising that concern about view. And how is that going to happen? Now, most of us don't have a view to worry about, but there certainly are some places where that may be a concern. And I think the City Council needs to figure out how to address it. Thank you very much. I appreciate all that's been done.
Jason's got a comment. Jason?
I would say, Sonny, if I could, addressing your first question, I think one of the first things that we're doing here, if we make this change, is to actually incentivize property owners who've been deterred because of the process. The issue of going before the ZBA allows you the opportunity to spend a lot of money on attorneys and presentations and fees, and then is subject to litigation and appeal should your neighbors decide not to support your plans. So in the areas where we're moving to convert to compliance with mass general law, you're taking out one level of the process that is subject to litigation. Now, some people are going to say, well, that's not fair, but the point is that limitation already deters people from going through the process. So if someone is otherwise compliant, conforms to all the other requirements that are expected of a property, the incentive of not having to go through the ZBA process is been told to us already that is an incentive to move forward. So that's one aspect of it. But anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and I agree, but I really urge you all to go beyond that and think outside the box about what else can be done.
Okay.
Thank you, Sonny. We'll try Hillary again. I know that we tried to get you earlier. Hillary. Ms. Frey? Hello?
Does she know she has to unmute herself?
Yeah, it doesn't show her as mute, Councilor Majota and Councilor Grow. Yeah,
No.
I'm not sure what's.
Could be technical difficulties. We'll try to go back to Hillary. Oh, you just mute Hillary. You just muted yourself. Do you want to try one more time? Now you can speak. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. We'll go back to you again. So Nicole, please state your address and your name, please, your full name.
I assume that's me. This is Nicole Seraphy, and I live at 2 Hovey Street in Gloucester, Mass.
Yes, okay.
Okay, you can hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. I did read through some of these proposed amendments to the zoning ordinances before this meeting. I do think, generally speaking, it's hard for people, obviously, as other people have stated, to find the information with regard to the meeting. My concern is that regardless of you guys spending a year putting this together and saying that it's going to create affordable housing, I just find that a little bit hard to believe. I mean, I can believe it in the aspect of, you know, if somebody wants to convert a home to put in like an in-law apartment, to have their parents live in that home so they can split a house. I could see how it could work in that instance, but I don't see how, you know, by just blanketly changing the zoning board regulations, that's necessarily going to create affordable housing, because once you change the ordinances, you really have no control over what, you know, as long as someone's developing a property within those ordinances, you have no control over whether or not that's actually going to be creating affordable housing, or is it going to create an investment property, for example, like I dealt with in our neighborhood this past summer, where there was plenty of opposition from people in the neighborhood on the project. And this project was one of those projects that was, you know, zoned for 30 feet, and they wanted, you know, maybe 5 more feet for that. What they wanted the 5 more feet for was to put up a roof deck, which doesn't exist in the entire neighborhood. And the zoning board recognized that, and they still approved it. And it was to a financial detriment to my neighbor. And the only recourse the neighbor has now is to sue the zoning board, which is essentially suing the city, which that's our tax-paying dollars that people are then using to protect the zoning board if they get sued. So if you don't have any money and you can't afford to sue them, you know, by blanketly changing the ordinance rules and saying, okay, everyone can have 35 feet, well, then it could create a lot of different things. And you guys don't have the power necessarily, once you know, blanketly change these ordinances, to really enforce, you know, how those ordinances are being used to create, you know, so-called affordable housing. I just find that really hard to believe.
Okay, and anything else,
Like, you
Nicole?
right now, the zoning board honestly they have like the reputation of approving everything, and they're already not enforcing the zoning board ordinances as they stand now, which is exactly what people were asking them to do, and they still didn't do it. And it was literally for an investment property. It was so the person who was developing it could make more money off of the property.
Nicole, sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure that we stay on track and with
that's fine.
With the proposed amendments, please.
I am talking about the proposed amendments. I was saying, I was using that as an example of, you know, why we need to go from 30 feet to 35 feet. This is a prime example of why that doesn't really work, if you blanketly give ordinances like that and change them all together, because you don't have no control over what those changes, like what people are going to use the changes is for. And I don't see how that necessarily is going to translate into affordable housing.
Okay.
Unless
Sean,
it's a family situation. I could see that. Like a family converting a 1 family to a 2 family to accommodate their older parents and things like that.
Okay.
Nicole, can
Sean,
I have her address again? I didn't get her address.
Nicole, what was the address, please?
2 Hovey Street.
Okay.
2 Hovey Street?
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sean, do you have any comments, or we got the notes? We can move on to the next person.
Just to quickly clarify for Nicole, in terms of what the ZBA's responsibility is in terms of zoning. They have 2 issues really that for the special permit granting authority. They have that in some cases. And that would be sort of in this instance, it would be for creation, and in terms of our amendments, creation of a 3-family in R30. They have that special permit granting authority right. But the other avenue that you go to the ZBA for is for a variance or an exception to existing regulations, ordinance. And I believe that's more in keeping with what Nicole was talking about in terms of the height variance. That was a situation with the ZBA looking at the situation, saying 30 feet is what our current standard is. Applicant came in, made the case for a variance on our ordinance, and they granted that. But it's not a situation where the ZBA in that instance, it is doing its job when it looks at the ordinance, looks at that particular project, and either approves or disapproves what the applicant had asked for. Just want to clarify that.
But to clarify, my point is, if they're not even enforcing the ordinance's laws as they're written today, what makes you think that they're going to be enforced going forward just because you decided to change the ordinances from 30 feet to 35 feet? And that's just one of the ordinances. I personally don't think that these changes are necessarily going to translate into affordable housing.
These ordinances are not designed to create big A, deed restricted affordable housing. That is correct. The impetus behind these zoning changes is to increase housing stock and increase the possibility of production of more moderately priced, more affordable units on the lower to mid market rate change, or market rate, not big A affordable deed restricted units. You're correct in that. That's not what is behind it.
Yeah, I don't want other people to think that that's what it's creating as affordable housing, because that is not really what it's actually doing.
Thank you, Nicole. We'll have Patty Page. Please state your address and your name.
Hi, Frank. Thank you. Patty Page, and I own the property next to Tim Clark at 4 Gloucester Ave. And I've been following this process a bit. When you have ZBA special permit requirements and certain approvals that are necessary, that preserves the abutters' rights. And that's really important in these smaller district lots like the R5, because the houses are just closer together and the values change dramatically. And the abutters really should have a say. And when you speak about, well, you just changed the process and how to get there, by removing the special permit requirement, you're really removing the abutters' right to a say. I understand it can all be appealed and it's very complicated, but I just really did want to make that point. Motion 2, multifamily, 3-bedroom by right in R5. Motion 5, 35-foot by right. And motion 7, 45-foot by right in the special districts. Should be really carefully looked at. The residents in this in the Ward 3 and R2 area to look at that. That is those 3 motions set up the underpinning for the state mandated zoning that will be next in line, which will make these areas much higher, much denser, more units. And it also will provide for a 60-foot height with a special permit in a 5-story zone. So these are, these changes in these amendments are really critical to look at and ask if they're good for the ward or they're not, because there's more steps in the state mandates will set up for higher and denser units if these are passed as a by right motion. So I would say 2, 5, and 7 should be voted down. Procedural barriers like parking in historic districts won't be honored in the downtown district under state mandated zoning. In the marine industrial harbor, if I'm not mistaken, maybe someone can confirm this. I think it's a 40-foot height by right in MI. So that's a coastal zone.
Correct. It's 40 feet in MI and the DPA. Yes.
It is correct. Okay. And the only thing
As long as it's the actual use is MI, that we have existing
correct.
homes that are in the MI district, which would not get to 40 feet.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And what I noticed in that map, I know it's not very granular. It didn't seem like the harbor was a darker color. It just, when you put that height map up, it just says 30 feet across Gloucester. So that was maybe a note. When you do these non-compliant lots and you say, well, it's non-compliant, it's going to still require special ZBA special permit. That's true. But what you're doing is you're giving greater flexibility to these non-compliant lots when they go for the special permits. So it's a compounding of this. I definitely think those motions that I stated before need to be voted down. They make the smaller districts, these R5, R10s, R20s, denser, higher, closer together. We don't have any data or studies on our carrying capacities, water, sewer, what our street capacities really are for traffic. The decisions here, have a lot more to be learned about than I think even the counselors to take a vote. Do the counselors really have a good working understanding of what these changes will bring about for our downtown area, but our community in general? There's no mechanisms for affordability anywhere. There's no guarantee. I understand it's housing across the board, which is
Patty, if you just
housing at the lower ends is not available here. All right. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate speaking.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you. We'll go to, it looks like we have John Harvey. John, would you please state your name and your address?
Yeah, my name is John Harvey. I live at 4 Granite Street.
Okay. Permission to speak, please.
Thank you. And I will just touch on something Patty just briefly touched on at the end here, but were you guys planning on getting the water for all these new people? In the city's last budget, they listed us as a 5 million day capacity for water treatment with a 4 million average. And I spoke to some of the people at Vialia and they said that's 3 to 4 million in the winter. But in the summertime, a lot of days they are currently pushing everything they can possibly put into the system. There isn't any more. And we run water bans most summers, not last summer, but most summers. We don't have anywhere else to get any more from.
Sean, can you speak on that one, please?
Just again, I don't have a report from the DPW that I can hand you, but I know going back to while we were working on the housing production plan and formulating the additional needs for housing within Gloucester, the DPW was consulted as to what the capacities were and if these projections of need would push us over our capacities, and the direct answer was no, that there was plenty of capacity to accommodate the amount of housing that was called for by the housing production plan. And
I mean, what is the total end number for housing in the city? You must have a maximum unit number at some point.
As to how many units that the water supply or sewer system can accommodate?
Yep, exactly.
Gonna have to refer that out to the DPW. I don't have that information here.
That's a pretty important question, I think.
And that's why we are writing it down, taking it seriously, and we're
Because
going to bring it up.
like I said, right now, I
meeting.
spoke to Vialia this summer when I was running for office, and that was their answer to me, was that there are times in the summer when they are absolutely already maxed out.
Okay. If you want to put that, we can try to, well, if you want to email me, we can work together and we can contact the DPW to see if we can get more information for you, John.
Sure.
Okay, do you have my emails on the website, or just email me and I'll be happy to help you out. Do you have any other questions regarding the amendments?
No, that was my one point that I wanted to bring up for the evening.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Next, I don't have a name, I have an email. Olympia? Yes, can you please state your name and your address, please? You're on mute. Now you're
Yeah.
perfect.
Olympia Palazzola, 57 Weston Avenue, Gloucester, Mass.
Okay.
I have a few things, and I'm going to be all over the board because I don't have anything in front of me that actually quotes what the new criteria are going to be. But first of all, I want to mention something about are we being regionalized with Boston? Did the city have anything to do with the fact that we're trying to change these zoning laws? Because I'm reading some stuff now that I had never seen before, and it's about something that we either accepted to be a part of being regionalized with Boston. And I'm just learning about this, so forgive me that I don't know much about it, and I'm learning. So I will tell you that I went to the library for a quick preview of what happened during urban renewal here. And it took down all the old buildings. That scares me about even this process, because one of the meetings, there was a lady from Uncas Road, it's not our area, but she told about a house that was on a lot, and nice house, and a developer came and bought it and built 2 units. And all of a sudden, it's not affordable to anyone in Gloucester. I think she said they went for close to $1 million each. We also had the same thing happen on Weston Avenue. And the process was kind of a weird process. There's a beautiful house sitting on Weston Avenue just before the bridge. It's a duplex, 2 condos. That was a house that was registered as a historic district house, and nobody notified the historic district that this had come on the market or anything. That house was torn down. Each of those units were sold for, well, the owner kept 1 unit. The other unit was sold for just under $1 million. That affects all of us that live there, especially the old timers that live there, because our taxes are rising terribly in Gloucester, and it's going to force a lot of Gloucester people out of Gloucester. It's really sad, because I don't think there's anything you can do with all the things you're going to allow that can't stop a developer from making sure that if he does buy something cute and not expensive in Gloucester and tearing it down and putting 2 to 4 units in there, let's say, and have them be $700,000 or $800,000 each. So is there any component that you could add to what you're allowing that makes them be keep to a standard where local people can still stay in Gloucester? So I'm just wondering about that as well. So I just don't see what they're doing as being perfect. I wish that it was going back to the drawing board to make sure that this becomes something that makes it affordable for Gloucester people to live here. You know, I'm one of those people that got turned down to put an apartment above a garage, and I would love to see that go through. It's not an attached garage, it's separate, but you know, it's a crazy situation. The zoning board doesn't win. You guys don't win. I almost would rather say, wait on this. Go back to the drawing board and put something in there that says that these units, especially if they change them to, we're talking about an owner doing this, but if the owner decides to sell this and someone else can come in and do something that's not going to be affordable for Gloucester, that's going to be kind of sad. So anyway, I just won't keep you other than, I'll write to you, Frank, and go through you to say some other stuff that I want to say. And one other question I have about this is that if this occurs and your neighbor puts a 2-family in, as a neighbor, do you have any rights to appeal what this man is doing? He has to pull a building permit, but can you do something to make sure that the neighbor doesn't do something he wants, which is totally detrimental to your property next door? What is in this to stop that from happening, especially by right? Like I said, I'm not thrilled that I have to go through the zoning board for everything I have to do. If you're lucky, you say they let you do something. If you're not lucky, they don't let you do it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for coming into the meeting.
Right. Can I take a crack at a couple of those?
Oh yeah, Sean, please go right ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Just no problem. Just first question Olympia had about the motivation behind these, where these are coming from. If this is some regionalization strategy, is no. These, as I explained earlier, all these amendments were locally generated after the planning board and then ultimately the housing production plan group and then the housing production plan implementation working group. And then the planning board subcommittee got to work on these. These are completely locally generated by looking at our housing needs, looking at our current zoning ordinance and how those might be addressed to actually encourage production of housing that is going to be more affordable, as Olympia was saying we need for people living in Gloucester. With regard to her addition, accessory dwelling unit above the her garage, I don't know when she applied for that. As I mentioned earlier, last year we did approve, or we did forward, and the city council approved a new accessory dwelling unit ordinance. So it's possible she was applying for that prior to the issuance of that. And previously what we had was a in-law apartment ordinance, which mandated that the whoever lived there had to be a relative. We've gotten rid of that, and now we have the ADU ordinance, which allows much more flexibility. So it's possible that if she goes back down and speaks with the building inspector, she'll receive a different response now, both from the building inspector and possibly the ZBA also. I think she asked if there's anything in our ordinance that allows us to mandate that these any new properties are either owner occupied or affordable. And no, the city has nothing in its ordinance which controls pricing, except when we use our inclusionary zoning ordinance to promote deed restricted affordable. Deed restricted affordable is the only thing we would have control over in terms of pricing. Everything else is like the rest of society, an agreement between two individuals, what one is willing to pay and what one is willing to sell it for. That's where we're at. I don't remember if I'm missing a question, but Olympia, I'm on the West City website. My email and telephone number are there. If you have questions that in addition about these ordinances, feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Sean. It looks like we have, we'll try Hillary one more time. Hillary.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Yes, now we can.
Okay. Well, thank you,
Your
Frank,
time's the charm.
Jason, and Sean for making yourselves available this evening. I won't keep you long. I don't know very much, but I'm opposed to any weakening of our zoning code at this time, because this TOD thing is coming. We are in the crosshairs of Boston. They are looking to expand to us. And I'm in favor of the creative use of special permits, subject to ZBA review, because, you know, we live here, you guys live here. And I just think we need the protection of our zoning ordinances that have, you know, gotten us this far. So that's the way I feel about it. I feel we're threatened from the outside, and I think the strength should come from within our community. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hillary, can I have your address, please?
27 Beacon Street.
Thank you very much. Right.
All right, thank you. So now we have Dennis. Please state your name and your address for me, please.
Sure, it's Dennis McGurk. I'm at 283 Concord Street. So I'm over in Ward 5, but I have no gripes or any issues to bring up about that tonight. But just some general comments as I'm listening to everyone. A lot of people seem to be concerned about the communication and why didn't we hear about it? And it's easy to say, well, we've been doing this for 2 years and where have you been? The reality is, you know, we hear about this, the important news. How do we get it? 3 ways. You get it from the Gloucester Times. I get mine religiously every morning in the driveway. I look at it. You get it from your ward counselors, or you get it by word of mouth. In this case, 2 months ago, I got a phone call from someone who knew I was interested and involved in the city and said, "Did you hear about the new ordinance?" I said, "No." And I called probably a dozen other friends, and they said, who are equally involved, and they said, "No, we don't know anything about it." So, you know, on paper, what you say that that information is out there, and I think, you know, to look at the reality that in fact a lot of people are getting this information too late. I think it's something to be concerned about, and have to find a way to get better communication out to the residents of the city. In reading and by the way, this is my 3rd time on a call here because it's taken that long to understand this thing. So for people that don't get it, yeah, I still don't get it, but I do get a couple of things. It looks like overall on a big number, there's probably 2,000 potential units that can be improved or expanded. And it's like, oh, well, it's no big deal because a lot of these are non-conforming and so don't worry about it, sort of thing. And reality is, we know, and somebody mentioned it earlier, non-conforming lots move forward because they get special permits, waivers, and variances. I think somebody did a study on it 2 years ago, and they said 91% of the special permits in the city get approved. Well, that's not very special. That becomes a standard. I think it was one by the name of Nicole mentioned that the roof deck example. Once something is, you know, this opens the door. You're opening the door wide for people to do 101 different things. Right now, you have got on a planning board agenda, I'm sorry, zoning board of appeals agenda. There were 3 people requesting to go to 1 and 2 and 3 family. There were 2 non-conforming requests to take the non-conforming off so they can go from 2 to 3 family. Another non-conforming request because they want to put an addition on. Another non-conforming request to exceed the height limit. And then there are 4 more who want to redivide the land. Now, I don't know if this is everyday stuff or if people are perking up and saying, oh, boy, now I have an opportunity. To me, again, I guess I would be concerned, as I've seen as other people are, that this does open up the door. And once you start the permits and the waivers and the variances, and I've read through this, once you get to that and they say, oh, you can file an appeal, it's way too late. The average person and most of us just can't afford what it takes to register an appeal and try to stop something once the wheels of it are going forward. So that's, I guess, pretty much all I had. One more final thought I think is important. Writing a proposal such as this, and then somebody asked the question, well, what is the capacity with the water? And to hear that there's no answer to that with this group, to me is very unnerving. And what else don't we know? We're trying to go forward here, but these are basic things that we really ought to, this is stuff you need to know going into the planning and not looking after the fact and saying, oh yeah, what's that going to do to us? So I just think that, somebody said all the amendments are locally generated. I think Sean mentioned that, and they are. So this is up to you and you alone to see that these ordinances are in order, that they're attainable. And what happens if the roof gets blown off of these with the opening up the doors of this thing and all this development starts? Then what do you do? So comments, don't need any answers right now. I do thank you for your time. This is very difficult stuff, and you're putting a lot of work into it. And it's easier for us to sit back and pick away at you. But the more I listen and say, this is my third time listening, the more concerned I get. So thank you for your time, and we'll keep at it.
All right, thank you, Dennis.
Hey, Frank, can I take a crack at a couple concerns?
Yes, sure, of course.
All right. First, Dennis, thank you for being involved. You say you don't get it, but my impression of you is that you get far more than you might think you do. You have really been investing your time in this, and I appreciate that, and appreciate the conversations we've had about this stuff in the past. The one issue with the ZBA, not to go off and defend them, but I think a misperception about what the ZBA is there for is the issuing special permits is a relatively minor charge within their purview within the city. The main reason the ZBA is in place is because back when they were formulating our zoning, which again happened in the 1960s and set upon a city that had 350, 60 years of development prior to Gloucester even thinking about establishing zoning. The ZBA principal duty is to actually, when citizens like yourself, residents like yourself come in and want to do a project, but their lot or building is non-conforming, was conforming when they built it, but now it's non-conforming because we put this overlay of modern zoning on a almost 400-year-old city at this point. The folks that put together our zoning knew back then that there had to be a mechanism to actually take a realistic look at the built environment, take a realistic look at the neighborhoods and how the neighborhoods either reflected the modern zoning or reflected how things got built in the past, and be there to make allowances for those residents who are in that situation of what they want to do is exactly what their neighbors on either side or the guy across the street is doing. The modern building code, though, prohibits it at that point. So that's what the ZBA is there for. And the fact that the ZBA approves, I think Dennis said 90%, and I think that was the case determined a few years back when some complaints about development happening out in Magnolia. I would give you that could be very well true. But part of that is because going through the process is so expensive and can be so arduous and so subject to appeal and litigation, is that most attorneys in town don't recommend clients go to the ZBA unless it's a pretty firm application with relatively high confidence, rate of confidence that it will be approved because it does in fact fit within the neighborhood and the built environment that surrounds it. So it shouldn't really be seen as a ding on the ZBA that they approve these things, because in my experience, there is a relatively high bar to get you there in the first place, so that the sort of default position is that if you're spending the money and you have an attorney that's going to take you through this, again, it can be quite an expensive process, that the assumption is there that all the ducks are in the row to allow this use. And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but I'm saying that in effect is the reality for the most part of the situation. So I know people like to ding the ZBA, but they're doing their job by actually assessing what's in the zoning and assessing what actually exists in the neighborhood and trying to come to some sort of compromise within those positions, realistically look at what exists so that they can continue letting people live in a neighborhood as it looks. So, and Dennis, you and I will have a chance for coffee at some point. I'll answer your other questions and not to bore everyone else with my long blathering. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. We have one more person who has a hand raised. Jessica Marjota. Please state your address and your name.
Jessica Marjota, 11 Madison Avenue.
Okay. And what is your question or comments?
I have a few questions I'd like to share with City Council and make sure that they're communicated to P&D. One question is, can we amend these particular amendments we're discussing? Is there still room for them to be changed and shifted? There's been some ideas on the call from fellow Ward 3 neighbors that, for instance, can they be made, can we specify that it's for personal owners for family or rental income, and then have it be a different zoning for a developer? For instance, can a developer be made to have a certain percentage of affordable housing required in their builds in order to build in Gloucester?
Just to jump in quickly in case you have other questions, if a developer is building a development with 6 or more units, yes, we have inclusionary zoning, which mandates the inclusion of affordable housing. If somebody is building a single family home or a 2-family home or a 3-family home, no, we do not have, there's no legal way to actually restrict and treat them differently than how we treat any other property owner.
The other answer is yes, there are amendments that can be made of the amendments, but they have to be legally compliant. I mean, we have to be able to justify them in terms of being in compliance with Mass General Law as well. So your example, you know, if you wanted to change part of the amendment, we can do that through process. But if you wanted to impose restrictions that weren't actually legally tenable, that would cause a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My next question is in regards to the multifamily unit amendment, and just understanding a lot of people have expressed concern for parking. Is there a requirement for off-street parking for the 3 to 4 family homes?
This doesn't govern 4-family homes at all, because that's is actually multifamily, a different section of zoning that would be covered in. What this deals with is 2 and 3, and yes, there is section of zoning which mandates that off-street parking be provided for both of those, and for single-family homes. Off-street parking is mandated pretty much universally. The only place it's relaxed a bit is, again, in this Main Street, Roger Street corridor, the downtown area. Whereas if you're within a certain number of feet from a municipal lot, you're able to not create, or you're able to create up to a 2-family now, I believe, in the downtown area without providing parking for that. But in all other districts and all other uses, yes, you're required to provide off-street parking.
Thank you. And then my last question, if there's time, is can there be an amendment and again, within the legal confines, I'm just trying to understand because it's hard to digest. Can there be an amendment added that allows abutters to have rights in the smaller residential zones to express and vote on their concerns? So say their neighbor is having a change. I'm hearing that there's not the specificity in an abutter's rights being able to, can you kind of clarify what are the current rights, and then what do these specific amendments change about those rights as an abutter?
Basically, what these amendments do is say that for these, again, limited modifications, the conversion from existing single family to a two-family with an exterior modification, which is currently only available through a ZBA special permit. We're making that a by right use, as is the case with somebody coming in, tearing down that same existing building and building a new family, which they can do by right, or converting that existing building internally, which they can do by right. And so that's the only removal of a special permit. And again, that they, in any of those situations, they're only able to exercise that by right use if both the lot and the dwellings are completely compliant with all zoning requirements. If there's any failure to comply in either the dimensional requirements of the lot or the placement of the existing house, then even with these amendments going through, that still necessitates a trip to the ZBA for review and potential granting the special permit for those uses there. And it's similar with three-family you mentioned, by right only in R5, if you meet all those requirements, if you're able to provide the off-street parking that's required by our parking ordinance, and then in zones R10, R20, and R30, three-family is allowed by special permit. And so even if the lot is completely compliant, provides all the off-street parking for those medium-sized districts, 10, 20, and 30, a ZBA special permit is required in all those.
Okay, thank you so much. My one last final question is for Councillor Groves, Chair of the P&D. Can you kind of walk us through the process of after these ward neighborhood meetings? How does it work? Where do these amendments go? The committee refers it to City Council, and then can you kind of walk us through the process and the timeline, please?
So once we follow, once we finish up with the ward meetings, which will happen at the end of this week, all the information that has been gleaned from these meetings will be given back to planning and development to review. And those questions that have been asked that haven't been answered or where clarification needs to happen will be made at the P&D level. At some point, whether it's the next meeting or the meeting after that, we will go through and address each amendment separately. There'll be a motion made, discussion on the motion, possible amendments to those motions made, and the P&D will vote on their recommendation to this full City Council. Once those 9 votes are taking place, they all will be then referred to the full City Council for a full public hearing on each of the amendments. So there is lots of time between now and the vote taking place for public comment. There will be a public hearing that will address each of those amendments in turn. So people can speak for and against each of the amendments. At the City Council level, amendments can be modified. You can amend the amendment at the City Council level. And once each one is resolved into a motion, then a vote will take place. I am still, there's been some change to the law regarding whether or not we need 5 or 6 votes depending on the amendment, and we're going to get some clarity on that from the city clerk. But either 5 votes or 6 votes, depending on the amendment, will be needed to pass the amendment, and then we'll just go to the next amendment. So the main amendments will be rather we'll follow that process. There are a couple of amendments that are effectively bookkeeping amendments about changing footnotes and things like that. If those amendments don't pass, we will probably go ahead and vote them because they're before the council, but they'll probably be either agreed or disagreed. But those have just to do with the language of the law itself, not necessarily anything involving a change to the actual amendment or the ordinance. I mean, does that clarify anything? I'm sorry. I should have stopped.
That was very super helpful. So what I'm hearing is there's time, and thank you to Councillor Gross, Councillor Marjota, Deshawn for your time and hearing all of our voices. It's really important. So keep up the good work. And thank you.
Thank you.
7:25, Frank, you got Chris McCarthy.
Yes, we're getting close to the time, but Chris, definitely want your voice heard. So Chris, you're on.
Chris McCarthy, can you hear me?
Yes, can you please state your address as well?
Sure, it's Chris McCarthy, 166 Bray Street out in Ward 5. I hope it's okay to just make a comment, if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay. I just wanted to really speak towards the two-family issue. I've been just from a business standpoint, I just build new. I don't do additions. I just want to let people know that this is something that I myself won't benefit from, and I've probably built 1 2-family in the last 20 years. So I just want to go look at it more from a historical standpoint. Because I hear a lot of people, I've been trying to listen to every single ward meeting, and I hear potential. And then I try to look back in the early 90s when they changed from when everything was a special permit going to a 2-family, whether it was new, whether it was adding on interior, whether it was adding on with an exterior, and looking at the economy in an upswing in 1993 when they made those, call it drastic changes. I would hope that someone would be able to get the statistics on what actually happened with the amount of conversions and new 2-families that happened, again, with lots that were a lot more compliant back then because they were smaller lots. They were, for example, on the Washington Street corridor, 10,000 went to 20. So a lot more lots were conforming. And my own historical recollection as a builder developer is that there was not a tremendous amount of big flood, even though people thought the potential was huge because of the conditions of the lots, the ledge, difficult building, that there wasn't this tidal wave that came through into 93. I'd hope that someone, I guess, would be able to dig out the statistics and graph it out to see, again, during a good economy, during a point where the values were creeping up, where there was a lot more sewer available, to see if there was really a rush that, again, back then the potential was huge. And I don't remember it, and I could be a little bit wrong with regards to a tidal wave of new permits for 2-families. And this is one where they didn't even have the restriction on exterior increases. It was just outright, you could do by matter of right 2-families. So if someone could dig that information, I think it'd be helpful to continue to bring forward to the public so that they can see historically, not potential. I just think it would be very helpful. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Okay, we have enough for just one more. Patty, it looks like you have another question or comment.
Hi, thank you, Frank. Yeah, I listened to the other commenters, and I'd like to just really get clarified that I understand what the 9 amendments bring forward here, but under the mandated state zoning overlay that's coming by May 2nd of this year, procedural barriers like parking requirements.
Hold on, Patty. I really need you to stick to the topic.
Also,
I am
just
sticking to the topic because this is their ward.
the TOD is not coming at us by May 2nd. Okay, and they're not related to the zoning amendments that we have before us.
The underpinnings of 5, 7, and 3, I think it was, clearly set up the heights for the city to qualify for the next round of zoning, Jason. And the community development is currently working on it. And it's only fair when these people ask about parking and about heights and stories that they're in regionalization, or what the Boston plan is, that they're really informed about the whole scope of what the community development is working on. And that is what's happening. And May 2nd is the deadline for that application. Now, whether we qualify or not is a different story.
Actually, Patty, it's not a deadline for the application. It's a deadline to respond as to whether we're actually going to pursue considering it or just outright telling them, no, we're not going to consider it. And then I believe it's
December 24.
yeah, December 31st, 2024 is when we actually have to submit our zoning ordinance as adopted that shows that we would be in compliance with the deal. The earlier thing, the
That's
deadline,
right. You can
the
go with
deadline,
an interim.
the deadline that you're talking about is just to say, here's what, it's more of an informational thing for the state. It's not a commitment one way or the other.
We just have to show that we had a meeting about this, and there will be a meeting at city council level to discuss what the TOD means. But at the moment, they don't even have a firm handle on what exactly it is that they're proposing for each of the cities. And Greg Catamatori, our planning director and interim community development director, has been working and listening and going to the meetings, but we're going to ask him to come to the city council for a briefing, hopefully in the next few weeks, to the city council and the planning board. But again, our participation in the TOD is voluntary. It's not being mandated. If we decide to go with it and we feel that it benefits the city, that's another issue. But at this point, the state, in terms of a mandate, the only thing that is a consequence right now is that we would not be subject to the receipt of certain city grant or certain grants that are eligible for the municipal area communities. There's nothing in it that states that we have to adhere to the TOD or even pursue it. So it is a question that we're going to have at the city council level and the planning board level, but it's certainly not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it isn't, Jason. I understand, and I understand the application for compliance, interim, full. I hear what you're saying. There is a window where we can state our interest and put it forward an action plan to work towards that. However, if those motions that I mentioned before are not passed, we won't qualify, at least in this round. And then you'll have to put into an action plan that you're going to work towards those. So I just want people to understand that there is a second round of zoning that is being discussed, introduced, and we don't know what's going to happen with it. So I appreciate you addressing that. Thank you.
Again, just to clarify quickly, what we're doing now, this round of amendments, there's actually no connection with the TOD. They're completely separate things. The TOD has its set of guidelines, none of which correlate to whether you can build a two-family home in R80 on 80,000 square feet. None of the things in the TOD relate to treating how you get to two-family throughout the city equally. The TOD doesn't cover that. The TOD doesn't concern itself with single-family homes. TOD doesn't concern itself with two-family. TOD may, if depending on how the guidelines work out, they may acknowledge three-family development. Right now, that's up in the air. But in terms of everything that exists within the current amendments before the city council now, there is absolutely zero interconnectedness. And the conspiracy-laden propaganda that's being floated around Facebook and a newly established website that we're somehow being taken over by the state or by extension the UN is completely fantasy.
Well, I appreciate that, Sean. And all I'm talking about is there's a couple by right requirements in the TOD. One is 45-foot by right in R5 in the central district. So you can get 60-foot by special permit. That's a requirement. And the multifamilies by right in R5 are requirements. And those are, I'm not saying how you came about it, but they are included in the amendments. So they triggered to me, if those things were scaled back, declined, voted against, then we would have no worries about accommodating higher buildings and denser buildings where we may not want them. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
There's also, well, not to get too far in the weeds in this because it's not up for debate right now, but there's also considerable leeway granted by the state in this, and actually how you accommodate that production of units. And the fact of the matter is that our current zoning in R5 is more dense than the 15 units per acre that this TOD requires. And if you go to, I can't remember if I sent you the link to this webinar I watched the other day or not. I know you've been looking at some of the links yourself, but if there is a entire menu of housing options that cities can adopt to get to this. There's no mandate that we see a 45 or a 60-foot building next to the train station. The zoning is mandated. The production and the execution within that is entirely up to the city. And as Jason said, the city's not even mandated to take it. If we don't take it, we give up some funding. And whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But the notion that somehow the arm of the deep state is reaching into Gloucester and contorting what we want is simply untrue, because the zoning, the actual nuts and bolts of how that TOD is exercised and achieved in Gloucester is entirely up to us. There's a framework there, but getting it accomplished is entirely up to us.
Right, or not accomplished. And that, I understand it is voluntary and it's a grant issue. The grants only come in to develop these things. They don't go into the future to support the strains on our infrastructures and our services. So the trade-off, not to take the grants is perfectly acceptable.
True, but also I'd say that, again, not to keep going on this, but I also say that the whole reason we're having these discussions now about the existing amendments is because we do recognize, or at least we should, I certainly do, that we're in dire need of additional housing, and additional housing that hopefully is more affordable for our residents. So the production of housing, to thumb our nose at that, I think is cutting off that proverbial nose to spite ourselves. Again, not to say that I support adopting the TOD. I'm saying that to disallow that we're here trying to create more housing options would be to ignore the truth of our reality. We need more housing.
Thank you, Sean.
Well, there's
Patty?
some housing we need and some we don't. And the 15 units per acre is interesting that you have that statistic, so thank you, which means we really don't need to get denser downtown or higher. So again, those height to 35 and 45 probably need to be declined. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Patty. I want to wrap this up. We do have, it looks like there's no more hands. No other attendees want to speak. So I want to thank first Sean. Thank you so much for spending your day with us. And I know you got pork chops on and you're probably hungry. So that sounds great. Jason, thank you so much for participating. Sherry, thank you as well for helping us helping us out for everything. For any other Ward 3 attendees, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me or Jason or anyone. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Other than that, thank you so much, and everyone have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
And thanks everyone for showing up.
Thank you.